Welcome aboard all. This week we got special guest Peter Borcherds from the UK. We chat about all things his lovely layer and how he's integrating JMRI software and TrainController to run the layer. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Daz from Model Techniques. Our YouTube channel produces how-to videos and also interviews like this from modelers all around the world. If you think you're a good fit for the bill, please reach out, email me, and we can try to arrange to get you on the show. I'll put the link to the email below. Don't forget to subscribe. Click the little bell icon to be notified of upcoming video. Also, can I direct you to my Patreon page? Obviously, to keep the content rolling, every little bit counts. So without further ado, let's get started. And a little public service announcement here. Make sure you vote 1 for Gordy Robinson in the upcoming NMRA elections. I believe personally he has brought this hobby into the 21st century with such initiatives as the NMRA X virtual clinics and the like. So make sure you vote for Gordy. Welcome aboard, Peter Borcherds from the UK, who's come to have a chat to us on Model Techniques. It's evening over here, but it's obviously 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning over your part of the world. So thanks for coming along, Pete.
Yeah. Yes, thank you very much, Des. Thanks for the invite. Yes, it is. Yeah, it's 9:30 over here. A very wet day in the UK.
Very wet.
Yeah.
Okay, you are winter. We're the other end of the extreme over
That's
here.
right.
We're in our summer now, so which is nice because I'm a
Yeah,
bit over the winter.
As a certain Marty would say, it's warm over there.
It's warm. Yeah, we don't get quite the humid weather like what I think what you guys and girls get in the UK and what he gets up there.
Yeah, that's right.
Obviously, please tell me if I'm wrong here. You can be found. You've got a website, Chicago Sub nscale.com. I'll link all these below. You've also got a YouTube channel which is BNSF Chicago Sub in N-Scale with a Facebook name under the same name as for your Facebook,
Yep.
and obviously a regular contributor on a Modeller's Life podcast, which is how I've sort of come up to here we are now today. So
I'm doing my bit to, got my Model's Life shirt on, as always.
Yeah. Well, I've yet to buy one yet. I'm still after one Lionel Strang to come on this show, but he's eluding me at this point. So give me time. So.
Okay, I'll be on his case. Don't worry.
But everyone keeps telling me he does have a face for radio, but I don't think I've got a face for television. So, but anyway.
That's fine.
All right. So I always like to get to know about people's history within our hobby. So can you sort of tell us about your history and how you've got into the hobby where you are today?
Well, it starts way back when I'm sure you can tell from my accent, I'm from South Africa originally. And when I was a kid, my dad was into steam trains, real, one-to-one scale steam trains, so real steam trains. So he always used to take me down to the station, watch the steam trains go by. That's when we still had mainline steam in South Africa. And that was in the 70s. And then he got me interested in, he bought me a few, at that time, I don't know if you remember Lima.
I don't know if it was,
so the Italian manufacturer, they did South African models. So he bought me a set of those, and I did, with the help of him, I started building a small layout. And then it sort of progressed from there. It was more his interest dragging me into it. He sort of got me to do all the work, but it was really him who wanted to play with it all. And luckily we had a spare. Well, we built an art studio for my mother, but she never got to use it because we took it over as a train room, which is great. So, and that carried on through my teens. And for some reason, I think there was, so that was all South African at this stage, and then some UK Hornby as well, because my mother's British, so I spent a lot of time out here in the UK as well. So
sure.
I had some Hornby stuff, even French SNCF, the TGV, the Lima model, even had that at one stage. But none of that was American. I didn't know anything about American modeling apart from a few models a friend of mine had. His father had a big layout, and he had, looking back now, I just didn't realize at the time, he probably had over 100 brass HO American models.
Wow.
amazing models. But at the time, I just didn't think anything of them. I just thought, oh, they're nice, but I didn't think any, didn't realize what they were at the time. And then after that, there was a shop, local shop in Cape Town that specialized in South African stuff, but also they had a whole cabinet full of American brass and American HO and N scale and all that.
Sweet.
And I ended up buying one locomotive there. I think it was a Proto 2000, I think. It was Proto. Yeah, anyway, American model. I bought one and brought it home, and this was so it was a Kato. Remember, it was a Kato one, HO Kato. So remember how amazing this ran compared to the Lima stuff. Bear in mind, Lima had one powered truck, and it was very basic. And this thing just ran so smoothly, and that got me hooked on American models. And then sort of late teens, early 20s, sort of his usual thing, went away from it for a bit, usual, not
Girls
cars, but girls and studying and all that kind of stuff. And I then ended up, when I eventually moved to my own place, I got back into it, but an armchair modeler. I just kept interested, learned more about the American stuff. I joined the MRA back. I've been a member for over 20 years, I think. So well over 20 years, probably about 30 years, I think. So I became a member of the MRA, still in South Africa. And then I didn't have any layout or anything by at that stage. I'd taken the one down at home because I was living away from home. I'd living in another house. And then when I moved back to the UK, well, not moved back. When I moved to the UK about 20 years ago, I then started a module because I found a local club that did American stuff. There's a local UK club, local, an hour and a half away from me, and I joined them and got interested in N scale because there's a guy there who was another South African. He was really into his N scale, so he got me hooked on the N scale, and we started building an N scale module at the club, and then I started building one at home as well. Yeah. And it just went from there, really. So
that was the Rochelle intermodal. Was that the module you made?
That's when I started way back in, I think 2002. I think I started that one.
Sure.
2003, something like that. I first started that. So I started, just basic, and like most things in the UK, most layouts in the UK, you build it for exhibition use, sure. So you can take it to exhibitions so people can see it at shows and stuff. So it was just 4 boards at the time, so 2 loops and an intermodal yard in the middle. Yeah. So I could just run trains around and do basic switching just for for shows. I'd also had a Digitrax system. I think that actually got that. Did I buy that in South Africa? I can't remember. Might have been in the UK. I bought that. I'm not sure. But I had a Digitrax system by then. So I was, really into that whole DCC right from the beginning, from the first module I made. It was all DCC, block detection, the whole lot right from the beginning. Sure. But that was over. Yeah, it was about 20 years ago. I started building that one.
So obviously N scale American, more. Mm-hmm. What would you call it? More recent type modelling, more recent eras, I suppose, is what I'm trying to get at. Yes. So that's why. I suppose I'm very interested. Is it more of a space thing to do with the N scale, do you think, or more bang for your buck, or it's just something you got exposed to from that acquaintance you were talking about?
Well, I mean, I started, strangely enough, I started off with an HO one here. Sure. That was just in my room. It was a small switching layout. It was actually based on so Tim Morris from Fast Tracks originally had a layout called the I don't remember what it's called now. Kelsey something, I think. I don't know what it is now. But a really, really nice switching layouts he built. Sure. And I based my original one on that track plan. And that's what I had for a couple of years before I got hooked on the N scale, before I realized about the N scale thing. And then it was all about, I wanted to run long trains. I still loved switching. I still love switching now. I mean, switching is still my main interest, but for the exhibitions, I wanted to have something, long trains running, because I got hooked on these American trains, the long intermodal coal trains, all that. And N scale was really the only way I could do that.
Sure.
So that's why I sort of focused on that, just because I could get more into the space I had, as opposed to, just my basic, at the time was I think a 2x4 foot layout or 2x6 foot layout,
Right.
which was an HO switching one. But an N scale, I couldn't do, even now it was not big enough for nice long trains. So that's why I got hooked on the N scale, just for space, really.
All right, Pete, you don't mind me called Pete, or is it you're rather Peter?
No, it's fine. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I get
we're Australians.
things,
we cut down everything. If you've spoken to Martin, we got nicknames for everyone, if you didn't realise. So, all right. So tell us your current layout that you're undertaking, because obviously I'm very interested in the way you're running this with TrainController and various other things.
Yeah.
So we'll start. Well, what's the name of the current layout, I suppose, that you're building?
Okay, that's the BNSF Chicago Sub and N scale. So it's based on the Chicago Sub, which runs from Chicago to Aurora. That's just the initial bits I'm building. So that is what they call the racetrack. So it's a 4-track main. They have metro passenger service and a lot of freight service. So I wanted to just incorporate both. Because I got interested in the metro stuff with my old layouts, so my Rochelle intermodal layout. I started incorporating the passenger side, but it wasn't built for that. So I wanted to build a brand new one that incorporated the passenger side as well. So that's where the TrainController comes in.
Sure.
With my old layout, I used TrainController, especially for the shows. The main reason I got interested in TrainController was when I was at an exhibition, I wanted to talk to the people coming to see my layout. I didn't want to be standing there operating the trains. So that's when I found out about TrainController, and I, with block detection, I then set it all up so that it could run the trains automatically while I was chatting to the guys asking me questions about the layout.
Sure.
And then with when I got this my old layout in the garage in the house we're in now, and I expanded it with extra modules and brought in more of the switching, I then used the TrainController for two things. One was for automation of the passenger. So at the time, I just used, I think it was a Amtrak set.
Sure.
So I just had the Amtrak run by TrainController.
Yeah. And
then you can see on the screen, on the various screens you see there, I had a tablet set up that had TrainController switchboards. So those who know TrainController, you've got different switchboards that you set up. You can have one main one for just your whole layout, or you can have different small ones. And I made a switchboard for each switching location on my layout. So my intermodal yard, my main yard, my industrial area, different switchboards. So at each location, I had an Android tablet set up.
Sure.
That then connected to the main computer via a web interface, showing the TrainController switchboard for that particular location.
Yeah.
So apart from having the passenger train running automatically, I also use the TrainController switchboards for local switch control. So if someone wanted to change the points or the switches at each location, you use the panel, the TrainController switchboard to do that.
Sure.
Because it was all set up, it was so easy to set up compared to JMRI and the Panel Pro.
Yeah.
I just didn't get on with it at the time.
Sure.
So it was a lot easier to set it up for that. So people could then use the TrainController for that. And then I had separate tabs they could switch to for the JMRI operations as well. Right. So it was a multi-purpose tablet they could have stand at their station and have one tab for changing the points and another one for doing the operations.
Yeah.
And it's mainly because I wanted to get away from all the wiring for having local push buttons, which I originally had in my old layout.
Yeah.
And it was absolute pain to get all that wiring, wire up all the control panels and all that. So I thought I want to get away from all that.
Sure. And
also, if I changed something, I didn't want to have to undo all the wiring and redo it.
Yeah.
So it was a lot easier just to have it completely software controlled.
Yeah.
So if I changed the points, which is a couple of clicks in TrainController, and that was it, new layout and ready to use, just there it is on the screen.
Yeah, sure.
So it worked quite well.
Yeah, I use Smart Hand on my layout quite predominantly. Similar, I don't use the tablets. I use old PCs that are on the network.
Yes.
Wireless network.
Okay.
Same, different. Obviously, you use the web service for it, and I sort of go with that one. I'm just dabbling. We'll talk about remote ops and virtual ops in a sec.
Yeah.
I've started dabbling with how I've been able to achieve to, share those switchboards, as you say, or as they are called in TrainController, to the rest of the world, effectively, whoever I allow into the computer, so to speak. So I just think Smart Hand is such a clever little thing. And you're right, that's probably the primarily reason why I went to TrainController. It is a lot easier, I found, in the front end to program than JMRI, because I'm not very au fait with the code side of things. But
it's literally just drag and drop, and adding a switch is literally a click, put in the switch number, okay, and that's done.
That's right.
Now, you try to do the same thing in JMRI. It's a lot more steps just to try get it working.
Yeah, sure.
Then you got the logics and all that stuff. So I mean, I'm gonna leave JMRI for the for my dispatching. When I get to my dispatcher panel eventually, I'll be using JMRI for that. But for now, just for local control, TrainController is brilliant.
Yeah. So how does that? Obviously, that was where I was going to get into that. So obviously, for people that don't know, TrainController is just a off-the-shelf software product that controls the model railway. So it controls a myriad of things, from switching the points, route control. You set up schedules, which are not a time schedule within TrainController. They're a schedule from point A to point B to C to D, and however you want to travel that train over a layout or a given distance, I suppose. And that's just touching the surface, as you know, Pete, regarding TrainController. It's just unbelievable amount of automation that you can do with it in the back end. That's I'm sort of dabbling with a little bit, but so what part of JMRI, for a layman like myself who I've played with Dakota Pro, so what sort of the dispatch panel are you referring to in JMRI that you're going to use for your operations?
Well, there are two ways to do it. I mean, there's the Panel Pro, which is part of JMRI. That's where you set up your dispatcher panel or your layout controller, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
But you have an add-on for that called CATS, which is CATS. I think it's called something Crandic Automated Train something. I can't remember exactly what it's, system or something like that.
Sure.
That is pretty much meant for if you want to do the old style sort of 50s 60s CTC, where you've got the toggle switches. You can use JMRI for that. So Panel Pro has got that. It's easy to do. Well, not easy. It's built to do that. So you can add your make it look exactly like a CTC machine with your toggle switches and everything.
Sure.
The CAT system is more for the modern dispatcher, where you've got your track diagram, and then you've got the click. The dispatcher can then change a signal indication or change the points by mouse clicks, and that's what CATS is built for. And because I'm doing a modern layout, that's what I'm going to be using. And it's just more because of the way CATS is built and the way it integrates with JMRI. You can have a really realistic dispatching system where you can control the signals, control the points. You got your block indication, all of that. It's a really powerful system. It takes a lot of work to set it up. I mean, I did a basic test one of my old layouts. Took me a long time to do it, but it worked great. And they've also got an automation thing as well, which is another step, a bit like TrainController has, but a lot more complicated, where they do an automatic, train control as well. But I'm not going to go into that for JMRI. I'm going to leave TrainController for that, just because it's so much easier.
Sure.
But it's a brilliant system for dispatching. So I'm going to have that for the dispatcher. He'll have his dispatcher panel, and then say TrainController for all the rest. That's it's a good system, really. And bear in mind, it's free. It's an open source system. It's amazing.
Sure. Definitely something I think I want to get into look at myself, because I'm hearing this CAT's been mentioned quite a few times now, with various operators, but you're the first I know of that uses TrainController incorporated with it, which it sort of excites me, because you spend a lot of time and money getting into the program, so to speak, and then
especially
the way
especially the money.
Yeah. So
it's not a cheap system, unfortunately.
No, and
but it's very, very good.
Yeah. So it's been asked me a few times. I was on a show by Master Motorora. He's called Jim Kello. He runs New Track. And New Track's New Track's he has a weekly podcast, and I was on there the other week about TrainController and my exploits with it, I suppose. And he posed the question to me, and I sort of fumbled my way around it because I didn't really know the answer. And he said, why is it the Americans are not getting into TrainController? That was the question.
Yeah.
So what would be obviously you run an American layout. You're trying to emulate an American prototype, the way the operations by what you're saying. What's sort of your opinion on it? Because it's quite an interesting observation of Jim's, I think. So.
Yeah, I've heard quite a few people mention that. I'm not actually entirely sure because for those who don't know about TrainController, it's a German, created by a German company. It's a guy in Germany who created the software, and it's very, very big in Europe. I don't know for those in America or around the world as well. Europe is probably at the forefront of the whole layout automation thing. Yeah. They've been doing it for a lot longer than any of us. So TrainController has been heavily used there for automation. So it's been a big thing there. In the UK, TrainController is quite popular. Not as many, obviously, as Europe, but it's more popular in America. I suppose because it's close to Europe, so a lot more people have found out about it. Yeah. But I only know a handful of people in the States who do have it. I don't know if it's the cost. Bear in mind, it's not cheap. Yeah. But then you'd say the same thing with the UK. It's like, well, it's probably more expensive for us in the UK to buy it than for those in Europe or anything else. So I'm not actually sure because of the automation thing, because it's predominantly made for automation. That was why it was designed. Sure. And in the States, I think at the moment, more people are running their trains manually. It's all hands-on. Yep. You've got your throttle in the hand and that. Whereas in the Europe, because they do more shows with big layouts, big automation, and that it's all about having software to run that. Yeah. Whereas in the States, it's more. I think it's probably more hands-on. So that's probably why, they haven't got into it. I mean, it's slowly more people are finding out about it. Yeah. In fact, there's another software as well, which I found out about, which is very, very similar. And I think it's American, called iTrain. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
Yes, I have, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I think they're American guys. Yeah. So I think they've taken what TrainController's got and tried to replicate that. And I think that's brought a bit more interest in. I suppose just all the, people finding out about it as well is probably because it's European. It probably isn't as well known in the States, the TrainController. But I think it's mainly hands-on, the hands-on thing. They're more, most American layouts are controlled manually. Yeah. So that's probably what the whole thing is, I think. Yeah. Okay. That's my understanding of it anyway.
But as you well know, TrainController, you can control exactly like that though as well. So that's not too dissimilar how I control my layout. My layout for some trains can be totally automatic. Obviously, I'm a little bit of a lone wolf modeler for just by pure geographical where I live. And then I can run all my schedules are then either automatic schedules or what I call semi-automatic schedules. So turnouts are turned for you on the main line. Yeah. But then you still get the protection of your collision avoidance stuff that sits in the back end of TrainController that you don't have to program like you do with JMRI, is my understanding. But yes. So yeah, it's just interesting. Sort of, as I said, I sort of bumbled around the question and came up with very similar things. I think the Europeans are more. They like trains running around in circles and just watching and rail fanning them, whereas the Americans and I sort of sit somewhere in between all that. I think so. Yeah. I like a bit of a little bit of both worlds. I think so.
But it's pretty much the same as me as well. Yeah. So the same thing because I'm at the moment I'm a lone wolf because I used to belong to this club which I just don't have the time to go down there anymore. It's about an hour and a half away, so I stepped away from that club. So and around here there's no one locally who. Well, especially at the moment, this year, I mean, it's complete, it's not going to happen, So I kind of have someone over anyway. So I just wanted something that I could run automatically. If I was doing some modeling, I could have a train running and things happening on the layout while I was doing some modeling.
Yep.
But also if I'm running, I'm doing some switching, it's nice just having a few trains running around while you're doing switching, and you can just switch around them.
That's right.
So it gave me the best of both, which is great.
Yeah. It's an interesting, as I said, I'm still yet to find out sort of why, but I think we may never find out. So exactly why. But also Americans obviously are very, and I understand the patriotic side of things as well, where it's a German company. Maybe iTrains might be more successful, but I know Jim Kello, he got a little bit of backlash about why would you want to computerize a model railway for starters, and obviously it's something that you and I are into, and there's a lot of people that are into it, but he got quite a few emails sent to him like, why the hell would you want to do that? But I just see us, I did explain, I'm basically just a rivet counter when it comes to the computerization of my layout. That's the way I look at it. It's just what I do.
Yeah.
But, so operational on your, the operations side of things on your layout, what would that look like in the perfect world? Take the COVID rubbish out of it. So how many operators would you look at running? Physical operators, that is.
Well, bear in mind, I'm still planning my layout. I mean, I've started building a bit of it, but I haven't really, planned at all, the rest of it yet. But probably, let's look at the space I've got, which is at, I'm trying to think what it is in feet. It's like 20 feet by 10 feet, I think is the space I've got.
Yep.
And which is 10 by 5 or something like that in meters, probably something like that. So probably four to five people, I would think. Now have a dispatcher, then have two guys at the yards, and then a couple of road crews. So I can't really have more than that in the space I've got. So I'm still getting to the planning stage, but it's just that's what I'm thinking. And also based on the people I know who will come and operate. I probably won't get more than 5 or 6 anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's no point planning it for more because I'm never going to have that many people in here.
Yeah. Okay. That's
and most of the time it's just most of the time it's going to be me. So
Hence TrainController, because you can do everything you want to do with it. So
exactly. Yeah.
We'll
especially with the person. Yeah. So yeah.
So using JMRI, sort of, what other systems are you planning regarding this? We're still around the operations of the layout here. Once it's sort of built and moving forward, is it sort of waybill, car card type thing, or are you just going to use? I think JMRI, you generate switch lists. Don't you?
Switch lists, yes, because it's a modern layout, so based on the last few years up to current. It's going to be waybills and switch lists using the JMRI Operations Pro part of the program, which is is amazing. It's an amazing system. It works really well, really configurable, and just makes it so much easier to generate switch lists without having to do the whole car card thing. I mean, I've operated on a lot of layouts with car cards, so I'm used to doing that, but I prefer using switch lists myself, especially if a system that generates stuff for you based on traffic movement and all that. But it's modern layout, so switch lists and waybills and manifests and all that stuff.
So my understanding is you put all your wagons and all your locomotives, all your destiny, everything into JMRI, and then obviously you place what wagons at any given sort of industry track, I suppose, so to speak, and then the system just says, well, you make up trains. Is that how you do it? And then it just spits out a switch list and go, well, this is what I need to do, and this is the work order basically. So
it's a bit more, once you've got it set up, it's a bit more automated than that. You initially put all your cars in. I mean, I spent a good few hours on the weekend putting all my cars in because I finally got shelving. Setting up in shelving cupboards in here. I finally got everything out of boxes. And I think I've got well over 200, box cars and stuff like that, all my wagons, all that, So I put that all into JMRI. And you put it in with the, exactly what it is and the color of it and the number and even the length of it. So the scale feet length. And then in JMRI, you set up locations. So for example, I'd set up my yard, say a warehouse or whatever, whatever locations you've got. And then each location, and then you then set up however many tracks it's got. So if a warehouse has got one track and it can hold, I don't know, it's not the whole car, it's say, I don't know, 300 foot long. You then, so once you've done that, you put your cars in, you put your locomotives in, you put your locations in and your tracks in.
Yep.
You specify that track to be, it can receive certain types of cars. So it can receive box cars, grain cars, whatever.
Yep.
You then set up your trains. So you say, I'm going to have a switch job that goes from the yard to my industrial area. And from there, it's going to switch these industries. And you set that all up in JMRI. So you can say exactly what cars are going to be accepted by certain industries,
Right.
and even the yard track, what cars, what trains are accepted on that track. So you can have one track dedicated to a certain switch job.
Sure.
And then you have a yard switcher, which then puts the cars for that train onto that track. So once you've set all that up, which takes a long time, JMRI's got a system where you can say, you select what train you want, and there's a build button. You click on build. JMRI then goes through the whole system, looks at what cars are on what tracks, what space is available on that track based on the scale feet that you've specified and the scale feet of the track, the siding. And then it says, okay, fine. You got 5 cars available on the outbound track. You've got 3 spaces available at this industry. It's looking for 2 box cars. It accepts box cars. This train's got so many box cars, so I will allocate those box cars to that track.
Yep.
So it does that all automatically for you. So you literally just click the build button, and it spits out a switch list and a manifest saying, okay, this train has got these cars on it. This is exactly where they're going to be switched.
Yep.
And you've got the manifest, so the switch job can then put that train together for you.
Yep.
And then you go off, you have your switch list that JMRI has printed out, you go to your location, put them all in. And then as you do it, which is why I've got the panels on each switch location, as you do it, you enter in JMRI that you've put that car in that location. So you basically say,
right.
you've gone there, you've done all that job. So basically your switch list will have tick boxes.
Yep.
And you tick each box. As you place the car, you tick it and you submit it to JMRI. JMRI will then know exactly where those cars are. Right. So that when it builds the next train, it knows exactly which cars are where, how long they've been there. And then you've got schedules on top of that. You can set a schedule. So each industry can say, I want to receive 5 box cars a week. And I want to receive them on a Monday, Thursday, and Saturday. And JMRI can look at that and then automatically decide, okay, that car's been sitting there for 3 days. So we're going to move that and put another car in its place because the industry requires it on a Thursday.
Yep.
And it's just amazing how detailed it can get to. Yeah. So it's the whole setup takes a long time, and the fine tuning takes a long time. But once it's done, literally click on build, and JMRI just spits it out and said, "There we go, do that."
Sure.
And also where everything is as well, because a lot of times you think, "Well, hang on, where's that box car?" It's like, I know I've got a certain box car. I want to weather it. Where the hell is it? It's somewhere on the layout.
Yeah.
You just look at JMRI and it says, "Okay, that box car you're looking for, that number is at this location." You say, "Oh, great!" So you go to the location, and there it is, sitting exactly where JMRI said it was.
Okay.
So it's just amazing how that works. Yeah, it's complicated, but once it's set up, it works brilliantly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So I have had a brief play around with that side of things because I generate my switch. I got barcodes. I've set a barcode up for each on car cards. Type thing, and then I scan. So I might have a bit more of a play around with, I think, this JMRI, because I'm very interested in these CATs things you were talking about before. So. So just back on that quickly, I'm assuming, so we got different plugins we're going into JMRI here. No, I suppose no different from TrainController, I suppose. So the CATS integrates obviously with the Sprog as well. So obviously it has to have some sort of interface between the computer and the layout, some description.
Yeah, it's not really CATS. It's JMRI that does the interface. So CATS is a third-party plugin. A guy called Rodney Black developed it. So unlike TrainController, all the plugins are created by Frivold, the company that created it. It's a closed system.
Yeah.
JMRI CATS has got this third-party plugin which is created by this other guy. Right. And what CATS does is integrates with JMRI. So JMRI has all the interfaces. So like on my one, for instance, I used the loco buffer. Yeah. Some people use the PR3, have to use Digitrax or use the NCE interface, the computer NCE interface. I had TrainController connected to local buffer connected to JMRI, and then CATS will then integrate with JMRI, which then interfaces with the local buffer, which interfaces with your DCC system.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's really JMRI is the main thing that controls everything.
Yeah.
And CATS is really just a layer that goes on top of that.
Yeah.
That provides your signaling system and your dispatcher system rather.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that obviously takes in occupancy as well, if we're talking about signals, or is it? So, so within TrainController, you can run several, up to 7 or 8, I think it is, different DCC systems into the system. But what you're saying is they're totally separate from each other, though. So when you set up the CATS panel, so to speak, you're putting in, say, occupancy section number 1, for argument's sake, is in both effectively. So it's not, TrainController is not talking to CATS, so to speak. It's just using the same separate DCC address from whether it's a stationary decoder or otherwise. Okay, yep, that makes sense.
They're both talking to the same block detection system. So because I use Digitrax, I've got the BDL168 systems that provide my block detection. So my JMRI is connected with local buffer to the Digitrax system.
Right.
My TrainController's got a separate local buffer, which also connects into the LocoNet system, into the Digitrax. So they've got completely separate. You can only use the local buffer with one program at a time.
Yeah.
I know, although with JMRI, you can have different systems. So I have a SPROG set up as well with JMRI at the same time. So you can have different systems set up. But because they're both talking to the same DCC system, they're getting the same DCC signals, the same DCC commands.
Yep.
So JMRI and TrainController both receive information from the block detection system saying this block is occupied.
Yep.
So because they're both connected to the layout, they'll both receive the same information, so they can show the same indication on the screen.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Fascinating. So because I have a SPROG, because I started using Decoder Pro. So would I be able to use that to run this CATS system if that's what I need, something more sophisticated, more like a local buffer or LocoNet? What
DCC system do you have? I mean, do you have?
I have a Roku Z21, the black box. So
okay, so you probably can't use, because local buffer is the a LocoNet. It interfaces with LocoNet, so unless you use a Digitrax system for your block detection, which you can use separately to your train controlling system. But so I mean, I purely use my SPROG for JMRI for Decoder Pro.
Yeah,
that's all I use my SPROG for. But it's got a command station version as well, so you can connect it into the layout.
Yeah,
and you could use that to interface with the system.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so mostly at the time I really have all my use my SPROG for is literally just for JMRI for Decoder Pro. And also means I can have the same program open. So I can have JMRI open for my switch list and my panel and everything. And I can have Decoder Pro open at the same time with a different profile set so I can program the locomotives at the same time.
Yeah. So you then within TrainController still do the profiling runs with your locomotives as you do normally, or you don't go that far with TrainController?
Well, I haven't really played around with it that much yet. I mean, bear in mind I've had TrainController for I think since version 5 or something. I've had it for a long time. I've played around with profiling a bit, but I haven't really got into it. I mean, I will be doing that though, because obviously it's going to be for my automation of my metro passenger operations. Sure. So I will be profiling all my metro locomotives using TrainController so that the system has got that information in there.
Yeah.
But then I won't be profiling it for my freight stuff because I won't be using my freight locomotives in TrainController.
Yeah, sure.
So it'll just be purely for my passenger stuff, but I will be using profiles. Yeah, definitely. So TrainController can be more accurate, because bear in mind, I've got to have the accuracy, because these trains are going to be stopping at metro stations.
Sure.
So I've got to have the accuracy so that they stop at the same place each time.
Yeah.
And for that, you've got to have it profiled.
Yeah.
The JMRI, the train controller has got to have that profile information so it can control that train down to the smallest millimeter. So
just to let people know what we mean by profiling. Train controller, you profile what locomotives within the system when you add an engine to the program. So it's pretty well, it goes through each individual DCC speed step, and it's a time over distance scenario. So you'll have a programming run of 3 blocks normally. That's how I've set mine up. So you got the block that the train starts in, and then it goes into, say, the middle block where it starts timing in speed step 1, and the system will basically, in forward and reverse, this is all automatically as well, will time that locomotive over that run until it gets out the other block, and then it does it in reverse. So it can take quite a long time, as you probably know, at least half an hour. Some locomotives are half an hour to do the profile, but you just put them on the track and they do it themselves type thing. So it's all automatic. But you're right, it's some of the stopping distances are crazy accurate. I think I'm getting down to, with some locomotives with clean wheels and clean track, you're getting down to half a centimeter, if that, I think. So I mean, just to explain more again, just sort of explain more about it. The way train controller works, it works on the length of the track. So again, like in JMRI, when you're setting up your switch lists, I mean your operations, you give train controller the length of the track that you're doing, and because it's done the profiling, it knows that at a certain speed, the train will go a certain distance. So it takes all the information from the profiling. So when you set up your automation, in the old days, before that, you had to set up a dead block. You had to have a dead block so that when the train came in, it would stop at that's dead section. Train controller, you don't have to have separate blocks. You could have one whole block that contains stopping sections. And that is nothing. That's not based on, you've got 3 block detection sections so that it knows it goes into that one. It's got to stop on that block. It's got to say you can have one block. It goes into that block, and then the program starts counting, and it knows it's going to take 10 seconds for that train to go a certain distance. And you set a stopping section. Say it comes into the station. You know that 20 centimeters later, you want it to stop, and you tell train controller you want your train to stop at this place. So as it comes into the block, train controller says, okay, that block is occupied. I'm going to start counting. So it starts counting down, and it knows exactly at that 20 centimeters, it knows that train's going to stop exactly there. That's why the profiling is so important. But it's amazing how it works. It's a very, very clever system. Very clever system. I mean, I've seen guys use it for switching. Where they can have a train go into a station, uncouple, move to a different place, go pick up cars, all automatically. And if you've got it set up properly, it's amazing how it works. Really, really good. I've been working with a German gentleman I met on the train control forum out of Munich, and I've been emailing him back. I've never met the gentleman, never spoke to him, backwards and forwards emailing, because that's one good thing. You can zip the file up like I sent you, Pete. You can work on each other's files effectively and run what they call a simulator in the background, which simulates how the system will work in the best case scenario with all your detection. Obviously, it requires good track work, good wiring, that you don't get ghost occupancies, which is an issue I've got right now, a few of my blocks that I'm working through. But you can sort of work on each other's files effectively within train controller. So we ended up going, because I've got similar type of thing. I've got an automatic train that comes into my yard from another location, and I want it to be basically millimeter perfect over the top of a KD electromagnet uncoupler. So it'll come in, slow down, or ramp its speed down, go forward. It'll go through its KD dance, so it'll push back half a centimeter to take the slack off. It'll turn the magnet on, opens up the coupler, shuffles forward, turns the magnet off, and that's all automatic. But we used, because we needed really, really precise stopping distance, we ended up using infrared on those particular particular blocks. Don't ask me how he's done it. So you'll have a look at the file, then I'll give it to you. I can probably explain it the best I can once you sort of got it in front of you. But it's just some of the stuff that people are doing with this program, it's unbelievable. It's
Yeah.
just,
I
it's
mean,
crazy.
a couple of guys I follow, and there's one guy, I can't remember his name now. You've probably seen him. He's I think is he Dutch? Oh, he's a Dutch guy, I think. And he went into fine detail on this exact thing, you know, how to do it so you can do this automatic uncoupling, automatic switching.
Yeah.
Strangely, he moved on to flight simulation. Now he's moved on to music synthesizers. Well, on the same channel, which is just weird, but yeah. But he went through this whole section on train control. I mean, that's what I'll use to a lot of times to learn it.
Yeah.
Because he would go in, you know, especially the stopping distances, getting the stop sections set up, the braking sections.
Yeah.
He went into fine detail on how to set that up.
Yeah.
Which is great. You know, that's the good thing about social media and YouTube and stuff is there's anything you want there. You know, these guys who are experts at it can show you how to do it, which is great.
Yeah, that's right. So, no, I think it's fascinating. You know, just that side of things. You can get lost in the program. Like the amount of stuff you can do, particularly when you get into blocks, and you can set up, as you were saying before, a time over distance in a given distance. So the block, the train will enter 20 centimeters later. You want it to stop, then you can actually pick what schedule that stop mark is for, or particular train, or only every second time the train comes in. There's all sorts you can do. It's just
and you can even get it to generate sounds. So
action
you
markers,
can get it to automatically sound its horn when it goes past a grade crossing. Or sound its bell when it slows down to enter a yard. You know, it's all completely automated. That reminds me, the person that actually introduced me to train control is a friend, that South African guy who was at the club with me. He's the one who introduced me to TrainController, and he now lives in the United States. He lives in Colorado, and he's got a big in-scale layout. I'll send you the TrainController file for it. But please. He's got it completely built with Kato Unitrack and all that. But it's fully automated with the TrainController. And you'll see when I send you the file, he's got, I think, 5 or 6 yards or something like that. And he's got it set up, brilliantly, and it's just completely automated. He can run it manually if he wants to, but there are times when he just wants to sit there and just rail fan. He sits there with a beer and on a Saturday afternoon, puts his feet up and just watches his trains run. So it's good.
I must admit, it's very nerve-wracking the first few times you start trains. Even any more than probably 2 or 3 trains, it's quite nerve-wracking.
Yeah, you think, is this train going to stop? Because there's one stopped in front. Is it going to stop or go into the back of it? It's like,
that's right. And as I said, I've had a few occupancy issues that I'm trying to work around regarding ghosting and all that type of thing, which sends the system haywire every now and again. But
I've had that as well. Cross feed and that. I mean, there's one, I don't know if they've fixed it yet. There's one issue I used to have where if a train derailed, which is more my track work than anything, but if a train derailed, it would cause complete havoc with the system, with the timetable. And I have to stop and restart the timetable to get it working, because the system would just not know what to do with it. So there's some little quirks that hopefully they've sorted out, but there's some little quirks with it. So you've got to make sure your track work is perfect. You've got to make sure your block detection is perfect, because it relies on that.
That's right.
It's relying on that information to know where the trains are. So it can sometimes.
I'm not sure. I've never done the timetable side of things within TrainController. That's probably something I probably will look at in the future, I would think. But I know a lot of my schedules I've set up in a way that they don't. Okay, so for a schedule, it needs to have a start block and a destination, so a start and a finish point. It can be myriad of blocks in between. You can set up within the schedule some rules, how you want trains or anything else to interact, or within that schedule. So I've actually there's a rule there that talks about the schedule can be started when the train's not in the start block. So what that means, if you get a derailment, what I'm finding, if you get a derailment, because some of my schedules are quite long, block-wise, you can literally come in and out of edit mode as well, stop the whole railway, just start it again, and then it will just go off on its merry way. So whether that's something that something you need to maybe look at, I'm not sure whether that's the fix to it or not. I'm not sure what that's.
It could be. I didn't actually know that was possible, so that's good to know. I'll have a look at that and see. because could that cause issues with the schedules? Because the schedule will just carry on.
Yeah.
Even though the train had derailed, and it's like, but it just caused completely, especially with the timetable thing as well. Because when you do the timetables, that's based on times.
Sure.
So if the system's, it's gone completely mad, then it messes up the timetable as well.
Yeah, sure.
So, but with anything, you've got to make sure, even with JMRI operations, you've got to make sure everything's set up perfectly. You get everything set up. And if it's running, if it's set up perfectly, your locomotives run smoothly, your track works great, it'll work great.
Yeah. So, one of my issues, I think, is I run a protocol, which is German again, S88N, which is like an old Markland. It's a brand out of Germany called LDT or Lefinski, I think his name was.
Okay.
He's since been bought out. It's the same stuff they use in the Miniature Wonderland. It's the same product.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
So, but there's physical limitations to how long the run can be. I've since found out. So I've got you've got like the it's like a loco buffer, I suppose, that interacts with the computer via USB to TrainController to the rest of the layout. So it's got 3 outlets. No issues regarding the amount of modules, because I think I can go up to 2,050 blocks or something. So there's no issue there, but there's a physical distance how far it wants to run, and I think I'm at that distance, which is causing some issues with some false occupancies. Because I've tried everything. I've tried the resistors, I've tried diodes, I've tried just to try to bring down the sensitivity. So I'm actually going to divide those blocks out. I'm going to introduce LocoNet into the system as well. So use a different protocol altogether. So, which obviously you can do within TrainController. Doesn't matter what you use, just it's the way you justify
which is what a lot of people do. They'll use, some people prefer NCE to run the trains, but they prefer the advanced capabilities of Digitrax to do the block detection and the signaling. So they'll have 2 layers, which is perfectly possible to do, and it's a lot of times it works great because it means they don't interfere with each other.
Yeah.
So if your one system goes down, the other one will carry on going. Doesn't bring the whole layout to a screeching halt. But do you? I assume you put resistors on all your wheel sets, on all your rolling stock.
I have had some mixed. What would you call it?
Results.
Mixed results. Yeah, that's probably one way, a kind way of putting it. I've spent a lot of time, because a lot of my passenger stock, because I run all sort of eras 1, 2, and a little bit of 3 European. So sometimes it's very problematic on putting resistor wheels within them. So I was getting a lot of, sometimes they'd work. I ended up having to use like small surface mount LEDs with conductive glue. I found the best.
Surface mount resistors, not LEDs.
Yeah, sorry, not LEDs, resistors.
Resistors,
resistors, not LEDs. Then with some sort of resistive glue, or I'd run sort of like there's that resistive pen you can buy as well. I did that. So sometimes I was having sort of a lot of issues. So the way we got around doing that is, because obviously within TrainController, it likes to know obviously how long the train is at any given time. So it can fit in a block. But because I don't know how you're going to do yours, but there's sort of fors and against. The rule book says you don't need occupancy detection within the points or a point ladder or anything like that, a yard ladder. Obviously there's a lot of people that do that for added safety, but this gentleman I was working with worked with he put these, so we don't have a longer train that's getting some points thrown underneath it to derail it once the locomotive's cleared from a block. We've set up sort of certain conditions that needs to meet, and it locks the point until that has that condition has been met further down the track.
That's right.
Sometimes that sort of plays around with what, I don't know if you've heard the term throughput, which is how the layout sort of runs more smoothly, I suppose. But that's how we've sort of got around it. So to answer your question, I haven't sort of, I just had too many problems with it. So we sort of went down a different rabbit hole to do it. So
Yeah, because I mean that's sort of similar to what I had. I mean, when I did my automation with the passenger train on the old layout, I initially had issues where it would stall, say, dirty track or dirty wheels or something like that, and then the system would then throw the point underneath it. And so I put in a whole lot of conditions as well, so that it had to reach a certain block. It was also based on time as well, so I had all these conditions built in. But also, I'm also using the surface mount resistors as well. With the say that it's not a pen, it's like a resistant paint. And I've got to have it on all my cars because I'm doing the switching. If it was a unit train, fine. Those trains won't be broken up, so you can just have your locomotives and the end car detected, and you just have a condition built in so that if the train stops, or somehow it doesn't clear the block until a certain these rules are met, these conditions are met. But because I'm doing switching and that, I've got to have every car detected. Because the system's got to know that there's a particular car on a particular track. Especially in the yards. It's got to know there's something on that track. So that just means sort of 200 cars, sort of at least 2 resistors per car. So one wheel per axle is going to have a resistor on it. So so 200 cars, you do the maths. That's a head of a lot of tiny little resistors to put on there. But it's got to be done. For reliability, I've got to have it.
It's not really cost prohibitive. It's very time prohibitive, though, isn't it? Because obviously you can get
it's time.
You can get 10,000.
I mean, they're so cheap.
That's right. You get 10,000.
A whole roll of I mean, the most expensive part is probably the actual resistance paint. It's a tiny little bottle. I can't remember what it costs. It costs something like, I don't know, in pounds, it was like £15 for a little bottle, a tiny little bottle like that. Came piled with warnings, all these hazardous signs, like it freaked me out when it arrived. It's like packed in a polystyrene box and with a hazardous warning on it. It's just like, what the hell is this stuff? But yeah, so I've got a lot of work ahead of me to get all my cars done. But you've got to have it for the automation and also for JMRI as well. If you're going to have your detection system for your CTC, if you're dispatcher, you've got to have everything detected. It's got to be reliable, especially like in my Helix. Some people have one block in there. Some people have more. I've now got 5. I'm going to put 5 blocks in there. So each block is the length of the train. So if something happens to the train within the Helix, the system knows there's something in there. It doesn't send the next train up until that's been cleared. And so I've got to have it working perfectly.
I suppose that's I'm assuming JMRI, with if you know the coding, you could probably do all this as well, I would think, by what's my understanding. But it is. I'm not saying it's easy within TrainController to do it, but it seems to me more intuitive from my brain anyway. Well, there's no coding needed. That's the difference. With JMRI, you've got to use this Logix programming language. It's a bit like I used to be a web developer, so you have the PHP if else statements. So it's effectively like that. If this happens, then that, else that. Whereas TrainController does all that in the background. You literally just place the track section, give it the DCC address for the switch or the block detection section, and it does everything in the background for you. Correct.
I think that's the advantage of it. It's literally just drag and drop. JMRI, to get it working properly, there's a lot of coding needed with this Logix. It's a lot more complicated. A lot more conditions to set on that.
Are you out of interest looking at doing virtual or remote operations? Is that what you're looking at getting into?
Definitely, yes. Just looking at the stuff that Gordy Robinson has done, Martin as well, and then Dave Abeley's in the States. I think in NMRAX recently they did a whole operation session on his layout. Quite a few sessions, I think. And that's definitely something I'm interested in, because most of my model railroading friends are in the States. I've got a few in the UK who are in the same club as me, who do the American stuff. But most of the guys I know are in the States, either met them at conventions over there, NMRA conventions, or met them through the AML podcast or various other podcasts.
Sure.
So I'd love to be able to dispatch my layout, or have someone dispatch my layout from somewhere else. So, someone in the States can be dispatching my layout in the UK.
Yeah.
Or someone, Gordy sitting in the Orkney Islands, can be running a train in my layout. He can run a main freight on the layout from yard to yard, sitting, in his armchair in the States. I mean, in Orkney.
Yeah.
And just seeing what those guys have done, especially Dave, he's got it, I think, down to a fine art.
Yeah.
Just getting that would be lovely to have that. I mean, that's my aim, is to get that all set up. I've done a basic remote, with a yard at one stage, but that's, I'd like to have the whole layout, remotely operated if possible, just to have, so I could be sitting here and have guys all over the place operating. It'd be great.
When I was talking to Marty Jenkins, he's the one that started me down this rabbit hole. That's for sure.
Yes.
I think personally, the remote or virtual operations, call it what you will, is one of the biggest things in this hobby for us tech heads since the inception of DCC, I think.
Yes, definitely.
So I've thrown myself good and proper at it. I've been able to, I've yet to run an operating session because I still haven't run, I've sort of put my cart before my horse a little bit. I haven't run 4 operating sessions on my layout as it is. I'm sort of done bits and pieces to it. But I haven't run a whole operating session properly yet.
You wanted to get it running, in person first before you start operational remotes.
But I suppose the beauty of, I'm not sure how JMRI works with the web servers, but I know Brad Anderson from Australia did a nice little article for the NMRA as well.
Yes. I think he's quite a JMRI expert from what I understand.
He is.
I've never met him. I've never spoken to him. I know Marty and Gordy were dealing with him. There was all of them. We got this NMRIX done. So I know that he is very accomplished with stuff like that.
So, So he sort of, I had interviewed him probably nearly a month ago now, I suppose, on his exploits. So the beauty of TrainController, we keep going back TrainController, but I like talking about it. But the web servers we run for the switchboards on your tablets anyway, it's very easy to turn that into something that can be viewed from outside of your local area network. So,
just the same as with JMRI. Just all it is just an IP address.
That's right.
A local IP address. So using VPN or DNS, DNS or whatever, dynamic DNS or whatever, you can push it out to anywhere in the world.
That's right.
It really all comes down to the system you got at home. Your home broadband router. Whether you can open up ports on that allow that. I know some in the UK, some of the providers have almost like their basic system. You can't really do anything with ports. So not everyone would be able to do it, but there are ways around it, using TeamViewer or stuff like that. And it's just a local IP address. That's all we're calling up is we're just calling up an IP address with a port on it. So I've got, one IP address for my loud computer and one port. So you put your IP address : and then whatever the port is, and that one port will point to JMRI and the other port will point to TrainController. So, so it's it can work anywhere. If it works in your local network, it can work anywhere.
Yeah, that's right. So I've been, as I said, I've been playing around with that, but I've linked, so I don't have to give out my WAN address. The WAN address, so the wider area network. I've linked that to a domain name.
Yes.
And then I've got a separate web page where you just go and click on it. So it's just a matter of I just give you a web address. And then you access it that way. So I'm told that's a little more safe. Obviously, someone knows they're doing. They dig around anyway.
A lot,
but you obviously then you port forward your router at the other end to point it where you want it to go. So I think it's fascinating.
Bear in mind your WAN address can change anyway. So depending, I don't know how yours is set, but most home broadband providers change your WAN address all the time. So one day it might be a WAN address, next day it might be something else.
Correct.
So that's why I use these dynamic DNS system, so that automatically picks up whatever WAN address you've got, but it has a fixed IP that you then can either send to people, so it'll be the same IP they use, or you can, like you've done, connect it to a domain name, which is a great idea. So you just give someone the domain address, and that's it. They're straight in the system.
Straight into it. So
obviously, I assume password protected.
Yes. No, you can't. No. Well, it's not actually on. I'm only going to run it. I'll turn the port forwarding on and off when I'm not running. So it's obviously not on right now. It's on when I'm playing around with it or doing it. But then it sits in behind a password on my website. So
yeah, I was about to go. You get some guy from Russia starting to run your trains. It's like, what the hell?
As long as he does it prototypically, and I don't care. So
exactly.
So So where do you see, I suppose, the remote ops going? Because obviously I'm starting just to delve into the CCTV side of things and how that's going to interact. I know some guys are putting them on flatbed wagons where they're pushing it around or putting it in a dummy locomotive. I'm building one of those to see what they're like. But I've also been talking to Gordy and Marty, and they're more looking at the rail fanning sort of CCTV where they're not going to. But most of what's more what Dave Abeles does is my understanding as well. So
I mean, that's what Gordy's the one who was sort of saying about having the rail fanning side. So just having it at certain spots where you would rail fan, and you have a camera at that certain spot. I know Marty's experimenting with the Raspberry Pi. I think Dave is as well, actually. The new Raspberry Pi cameras, which are tiny cameras, and the new, I don't know, whatever the new Raspberry Pi, I mean, the boards are tiny as well. And some people are using Arduino. I know Speed is great with Arduino side. That's, I know I've seen a lot of people do camera cards. I think actually, what group is it in the States? There's a
Silicon Valley
Lines. They are probably the leader at the moment with the whole camera card system and Raspberry Pi. So I think everyone is using them as the example. They're setting the lead on that. But obviously when it comes down to, say, the scale I'm doing, so N scale, that's not really possible. I mean, I can put a camera car in front. That's fine. I can put a small enough camera. But I don't really want to have a camera car in front of my locomotives. It's, especially with HO scale, you're going to get to the stage where you can put it inside your locomotive. Where your headlight is, you can have a camera there. They're small enough now you can do that. It's just got to be someone who can get the board small enough, or maybe have a car behind the locomotive that's got all the infrastructure on it, the cards on it, and it just gets wired into the camera in front of the locomotive. I know there's a guy in the States who's done something similar. He's got a full-size locomotive cab in his basement, and he's hooked that up where the locomotive windows are. He's actually hooked up screens, LCD screens. And he's hooked up a locomotive with a camera in it. I think it's a dummy locomotive, but it's got the camera in the nose. And he operates it as if, in a real locomotive cab, sitting in his basement with a full big screen in front of him, as if he's sitting in a full-scale locomotive. I mean, it's amazing what he's done. And he did this a few years ago, and he's built the full-scale throttle levers and all that as well. So just, with remote operations, it's going to be, having all these cameras is going to be great. Especially when you're coming down to, stuff like switching, you're going to have to see exactly where you are. Obviously, rail fanning side, you can see where the train goes past. You can see your signal indications and all that. Although you'll have your panel on the side showing you that anyway, but at least you can physically see where you are. But having it on the locomotive itself, it's fine through freight on the main line where the camera car is fine. But for switching, obviously, you don't want a camera car in front because you can't switch properly then. But you can then have, in the locomotive itself, and then you can see, have a camera at the back as well. And there's one British guy I saw recently. I must find the YouTube channel again. I think it's a British club, I think. They've got cameras front and back of the locomotive. So you can look behind you and see all the cars behind your train as you're going along. So you can switch between cameras. So then for automation, for remote operations, you can be going along and you come to a switching place and you just switch the camera to the rear and you see exactly what you're doing behind you as well. So it's already advancing. It's already advancing to that stage where the guys have the 2 cameras on the train. And I know Brad's working on something like that as well with the cameras. You know, he and Marty are working on this camera system. I think that's going to be the next thing. I think with Dave, you know, he's done the remote operations down to a T with the dispatching panel, the occupancy, you know, so people can see exactly where their train is and all that, the signal indications. But now the next stage is getting the cameras fine-tuned. So you can physically see where your train is. You can be in the cab, see exactly where your train is.
Because I know Roco, which is an Austrian brand, actually market for their Z21 system a camera locomotive that's got in it that interfaces back to the tablet, and then you can actually scroll through, a bit similar, or a little bit similar, but not similar to what that gentleman you were talking about. They had the LCD screens where you actually view it through that locomotive as if you were driving it. So I'm not sure if it goes as far whether you can then access that camera feed and put it somewhere else, like out to OBS or something like that. I'm not sure if that's what you can do with it, but if they can do it back to a tablet, that's right.
Yeah, so if they can do it back to tablets, and the fact that it's got it's pre-built into the locomotive.
Correct.
Yeah, if more manufacturers do that, because the technology's there. You look at the spy cam stuff like that, and the cameras are tiny, and the quality is so much better now. You get HD quality from these tiny cameras. You just get manufacturers starting to build these boards. As you know, each board that comes out is smaller and smaller. Each decoder board, they put more on it. So, and it's that, and I think there's the battery technology as well, because you don't rely on track power, obviously, because from old, seeing camera cars, they flicker all the time. So you've got to have a steady power supply, but you've got to have a battery that will last. And I think the problem at the moment is with the Raspberry Pi is you're limited by the battery power. You're limited by your battery technology. So as that improves, those guys are doing dead rail and stuff. Their battery power is improving all the time. Battery technology is improving. So as that gets better, and it gets smaller as well. The batteries are getting smaller, higher capacity for a smaller battery. The better that gets, the more chance we've got of getting it in a locomotive.
Definitely.
And and that'll be amazing for remote operations. It's going to make such a difference.
I agree. Here's hoping they go that way, but sorry.
And the internet speed as well. Obviously, as that increases. So in the UK, we've now got fiber to home in a lot of the places as well. So we got 200, 300 meg. Sometimes up to a gig. So as your internet speed increases, remote operations will benefit from that, because you need a decent internet connection, a steady internet connection as well.
That's one of the issues I'll be facing. But where I live, which is a rural sort of town in South Australia, we've only got it's an NBN, which is national broadband. Which is like a company, Australian government type thing. So ours is all wireless at this point, just purely because where we live. So we don't have fiber to the house or even fiber to the node type.
Oh, so you got Wi-Fi to the house?
Yeah, it's basically like a Wi-Fi. But having said that, some of the quality that they're getting with the camera cars they're running at Silicon Valley lines, they're basically I've read through their Raspberry Pi, they're getting exactly the same up and download speeds. So, which is what I'm getting. So I know I can get, something half reasonable. But as you say, as we get more bandwidth, quicker internet, we'll be able to pump more down.
That's the thing. That's a limitation as well. Is most broadband, you've got a high download speed but a low upload speed. So like where I'm here, we've got I think you've got 70 meg download, and I think it's only 14 meg upload. Whereas at the office, we've got leased lines. We've got 100 meg download, 100 meg upload. So that's so that's what you want. And fiber to home will be the same. Fiber to home is the same up and down. And that is essential for remote operations, because obviously you're getting data in and out. Because especially with the camera feed, you need to have a high, a reliable upload speed to send that data out. Ideally in pretty much real time, rather than you don't need a lag. If you're operating with a camera, you're using a lag. If you've got a lag in the camera feed, it's pointless. You can't do it.
That's right. So
So everything, it's all based on technology. As the technology gets better, I mean, just look where we are with remote operations now. You couldn't have done that 10 years ago.
No.
Even 5 years ago, you would have struggled.
That's right.
So, it's just getting better and better.
It's taken an insidious virus to get people to think about how we're going to do this. So that's basically what's happened,
just look what's been done this year, with Gordy and Marty and those guys getting the NMRA thing. That virtual thing has also kicked off the remote operations. Dave did that this year. Always going back to Dave, but he's the one I know the best of who's done this remote operations.
That's right. He's the one that's tried and true to actually run it and fine-tuned it, where the rest of us are still in concept. So we'll get there. We'll get there at some stage. So you might get to run a layout here in Australia at some stage.
That'll be the idea.
Names down, because TrainController, so that's good. So that's half the battle.
Be good, exactly.
All right, Pete. Well, it's been a lovely chat. Nearly an hour and 20 minutes now. Obviously, we had a little stumble in the middle, but we'll get rid of that. That's fine. So I'd like to thank you so much for taking the time away this morning in your part of the world to chat with me and model railroad techniques, and away from your modelling and family and everything else. So this crazy, crazy world we're living in right now. So it's been great. Really interesting chat, particularly around the whole JMRI and the cats. I think I'm going to do some research into that myself and see if that's something I can move forward through, and that's something that's quite exciting. So thank you again for chatting with me today.
Well, Brendan, thank you very much for the opportunity. It's great to be on this, because I've watched your other interviews, and it's very great getting it out, getting all these interesting parts of the hobby out there, which is great. Sharing all these ideas and that. And then so thanks for sending my it's good someone else with TrainController as well, because I don't know, apart from my friend in the States, it's only guys on the community forums I've been in touch with TrainController. So we'll definitely be chatting about that further. And later today I'm going to load that up onto my onto my layout computer, and your panel, your TrainController layout, and have a see what you've done, and share things back and forth would be great. Thanks very much for that.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Good.
Make sure you subscribe, click that little bell icon to be notified of upcoming videos. Support us on Patreon, like us on Facebook and Instagram at Model Railroad Technique.